Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the next part in our series on textual criticism. We're looking at the ancient translations of the Hebrew Bible, and today we're beginning to look at the Greek Septuagint. Again, as a reminder, we're using Emmanuel Tov's Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible, and again, it's an excellent resource. Please refer to it as our information is being derived from it. So, let's get started. So what is the Septuagint? We're going to talk about that in general. We're going to look at its contents and its early compilation. And then finally, the types of witnesses that we have to the Septuagint. So what is this thing? Well, it's the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. And while there is some debate concerning when the translation took place, we think it probably was sometime in the 3rd century, at least with the Torah being translated into Greek, and in the centuries following, the remainder of the Septuagint being translated, the remainder of the Hebrew Bible being translated. The thing to remember text critically is that its source was distinct from the source for the MT, the Targums, the Syriac, and the Vulgate. So it's a very important witness to the Hebrew Bible because it's ostensibly a different Vorlage, as we talked about earlier. The New Testament and the early church quoted from and or used the Septuagint, so you see it in New Testament text, quoting Old Testament passages, the church fathers quoting from the Septuagint. So it's a very important text. Tradition has it that it was named for the 70 or sometimes 72 elders that translated it, and thus if you see the Roman numerals LXX, that's the Septuagint for 70. So what are its contents? Well, it contains the 24 books of the Old Testament canon, the Apocrypha, which consists of the Greek translations of Hebrew books that we no longer have, and books that were originally composed in Greek. We should be careful to distinguish between the Old Greek, the original translation of the Septuagint, and the other Greek sacred writings, the later recensions. We need to be careful not to lump all of those things together. Now, of course, we do, practically speaking, because we'll say, what does the MT say? What does the Septuagint say? And so generally speaking, that's going to happen and that's fine. But when you're trying to be precise, make sure you distinguish between this is the Old Greek and this is, the recension of Symmachus or something. So what are the witnesses that we have? Well, there are two types, direct and indirect. Direct witnesses are those actual manuscripts of the Septuagint that we have. So, early on, these early manuscripts are written on papyrus and on leather. Later, beginning in the 4th century, you begin to see these texts that are written essentially in capitalized, what we can, maybe we would call capitalized letters. These are called uncials. And as you can see there, they look like they're in capital Greek letters. But during the Middle Ages, we begin to see minuscules, and these are the lowercase letters. And of course, if you know any Greek, or you can just look and see that, these letters look very different than the capitalized letters, and there are spaces in between, those sorts of things. So these are the direct witnesses that we have to the Septuagint, but indirect witnesses are those early translations that are made of the Septuagint. So they're important in the sense that we can look at them and try to get at what the Septuagint was saying. But remember, now you're talking about translation of a translation. When you're trying to get back to the Hebrew text, you have to bear that in mind, that you're looking at, for example, a Coptic translation of the Septuagint, of the Greek of the Septuagint, and now you're another step away from the Vorlage, the Hebrew Vorlage. So you need to bear that in mind as a text critic. So tomorrow, that's our brief introduction to the Septuagint in general. Now we're going to be looking, or coming up tomorrow, we're going to be looking at the recensions of the Septuagint and how attempts were made later on to bring the translation of the Old Greek to bring it closer to the original Hebrew. So stay tuned for that. Thanks.